Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, the Dodgers win round one of the season series with the Giants, 3-1 behind a solid performance by Julio Urias. We're going to talk a lot about Julio's performance, some of the reasons why Dave Roberts might have pulled him after just 65 pitches and 6 innings, and just kind of what it's like to beat the Giants and how good that feels all the time. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Dodger fans. This is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening now, and that way you'll never miss a day because you know we're not going to. If this is your first time listening or watching, my name is Jeff Snider, and my co-host is Vince Samperio, but it's just me this week while Vince is on vacation. Vince got to see Bobby Witt Jr.'s first career home run in person at Kauffman Stadium on Tuesday night while we were watching the Dodger game. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans just like you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, which is probably a good thing, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off a $500 order. Use code Locked On at checkout. All right, let's talk some Dodgers. Really good win for the Dodgers, 3-1 over the Giants. It's always nice to beat the Giants. And, you know, they say every game matters the same. And in a way that's true, but in a way it's also not. A game against the Giants is more important than a game against somebody else because the Giants last year beat the Dodgers by 1 game in the division and are expected to be the Dodgers' main competition for the division championship this year. And so basically, any game that you can beat the Giants is also a loss for the Giants. On any other day, when the Dodgers are playing some other team, they have to win their game and hope somebody else beats the Giants. When you're facing the Giants, you get to handle it all yourself. So we saw last year that games, in one game can, little things can swing a game and ultimately swing a season series. And maybe it changes things. It was kind of interesting. There was shades of Sheldon Noisy to end this game. The closer is struggling. He gets a ground ball to short that should end the game. The shortstop goes the easy way to second base. The second baseman doesn't stretch, and it's a bang-bang play at second. Luckily, this time it went the Dodgers' way, and Hanser Alberto got the ball in time to get the out to end the game at second base. Last year with Kenley Jansen pitching, you'll remember Noisy didn't stretch, didn't get the out at second base, and then the Dodgers ended up losing that game. That was also the same game that should have ended on Darren Ruff's check swing that he swung, and the umpire said he didn't. So 2 different times the game should have ended, and then it didn't, and Kelly ended up blowing the save. And that ended up costing the Dodgers the season series and the division. If the Dodgers win that game, the Dodgers win the division instead of losing by 1 game. They win it by 1 game. And then the division series, the Dodgers have home field advantage, and maybe that goes a little differently. Maybe they don't have to use Max Scherzer in relief in Game 5. Maybe he is ready to go later in the NLCS. Who knows? A lot of coulda, woulda, shoulda. We're actually going to talk a lot in the second segment today about the unknowns and the coulda, woulda, shouldas with regard to pulling Julio early in the game. But let's talk about Julio. Julio looked really good for the most part. Like I said, we'll talk more about the decision to pull him after 65 pitches and 6 innings in our next segment. But he was very efficient, and he held the Giants scoreless for 6 strong innings. One thing I noticed is he didn't throw his changeup much, which was kind of interesting to me because the Giants stacked their lineup with righties. And Julio's changeup is usually a very effective pitch against right-handed hitters. But he only threw it 8 times and not really a ton of success. He got 1 swing and miss, but there were 2 hits off the changeup. There were 2 pitches out of the zone called for balls. There was a called strike, and there were 2 hard hit outs by Mauricio Dubon. That was the 8 changeups that Julio threw. So he was essentially just a fastball curveball guy for the night. So it's kind of remarkable that he got through 6 scoreless innings against a really good Giants offense. Now the Giants they have been hit by the injury / COVID bug lately. I guess one is an actual bug and the other one is a figurative bug. But, a lot of the guys who are out, Lamont Wade Jr., Mike Yastrzemski, Tommy LaStella, those guys wouldn't have been starting against Julio probably. I guess Yastrzemski might have been, but, he probably wouldn't have been successful. Yastrzemski isn't very good against left-handed pitching. So, it's not like this was a big, a weakened Giants offense. They have continued to score runs even when they've been having guys out. They've still continued to score. It's actually been their pitching that has been an issue. So getting through 6 scoreless innings against this Giants team is really good for Julio, especially considering that he basically only had 2 pitches. And even those ones weren't super dominant. And, that'll all play into this second segment when I'm talking about reasons why Dave Roberts might have pulled him early. But getting to Carlos Rodon was big too. A really clutch hit for Chris Taylor in the second inning. You're not going to get many chances against a guy like Carlos Rodon. He was really good last year, and he's been even better this year so far. He is a very good pitcher. It's the reason a lot of us wanted the Dodgers to go after Rodon in the offseason. He's good. And so big, really good at bats by, I guess, plate appearances. I always say that, good at bats, and I feel like I shouldn't because Muncy and Bellinger both walked to get on base, so it's not an at bat, it's a plate appearance. But I think it's okay to call that a good at bat because you don't know it's not an at bat until after the fact. So, but Muncy and Bellinger both walked to get it on base ahead of Taylor, and then Taylor gets the big hit to drive in the 2 runs. Both helped by the wild pitch by Rodon that put the 2 runners in scoring position. It probably would have only been a 1-run single if not for the wild pitch. And so that was big in the course of the game. But you're not going to get many chances to get to Carlos Rodon. And so for Taylor to come through with 2 outs like that, it was huge. And, Chris Taylor, he's been kind of hit and miss this year. Like, he's been hitting the ball, like his batting average looks pretty solid. He's had some good hits for the team. He's also had by far the highest swing and miss rate on the Dodgers. And, that's always an issue with Taylor. It always has been basically during his time as a good player. He swings and misses a lot. And so for him to get that hit was big. I don't know enough to know if it was a bad pitch by Rodon or just good hitting by Taylor, maybe somewhere in between. But whatever it was, big hit for Taylor and good for the Dodgers to get to Rodon because, again, we saw that was really their only scoring chance against him. They got 1 run later off the bullpen, and that was it. And you go into a game against Carlos Rodon thinking, we got to find a way to win this game. To win this game, obviously they still have to play the second game later today. But, the Rodon game, if you lose that one, I don't know. It's big to beat Carlos Rodon. Nobody had done it yet this year. And so I guess that's what I'm saying. So it was a relief, and I'm not concerned at all. The Dodgers only scored 3 runs because they played against one of the best pitchers in baseball so far this year. And we'll take 3 runs and a win. And thankfully, the pitching was awesome. I'm going to come back in just a minute. I am going to talk about the decision to pull Julio early, and my thoughts on that and what might have led to that. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. Hey, BlueNile.com. Look, Mother's Day is 4 days away, right? Today's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 4 days away. Mother Day is coming up. If you are planning on getting jewelry for that special mother or motherly type in your life, a wife, a girlfriend, a mother, a mother-in-law, a grandma, whoever, BlueNile.com is a really good option. If you're like me, I am really bad at choosing jewelry. I love to get my wife jewelry, but I'm bad at it. And so I've often just taken my wife to the jewelry store with me and said, hey, for Valentine's Day, your present is, let's go pick something out. And, that's nice. She enjoys that, but I know she would love to be surprised by something. And so what really jumped out to me about Blue Nile was when I saw that they have Jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. They can help you find something that special person is going to love. So many options. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off a $500 order. This podcast exclusive is only good through Mother's Day. Use code LOCKEDON. That's code LOCKEDON. Plus, every order is insured. It ships free. They also have overnight shipping available for a fee if you are like me and sometimes wait till the last minute. And it all arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. All right. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. When you're done with this one, maybe for your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Recaps of MLB games with analysis from our local experts. Taking fans through the season like no other network. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, so I promised we'd talk about this. Julio Urias was pulled after 65 pitches and 6 innings pitched in this game. I actually got a message on Twitter from a guy. I don't know actually if he listens to the podcast. We've interacted on Twitter, but he said, how do you defend today's move by Roberts of pulling Julio with 65 pitches? And I responded and said, I didn't know I had been hired as Dave Roberts' defense attorney, but I haven't gotten my retainer check yet, so I don't know if I'm authorized to speak on his behalf. But we had a good back and forth. And, I understand the guy's name is Alejandro. I understand Alejandro's point, and I think a lot of people would have liked to see Julio keep going, especially after the first 2 batters reached base against Brusdar Graterol. I'm going to talk more about Graterol maybe in the next segment. And, but it got on an error, the first guy, and then a walk, and suddenly, oh crap, the tying run is on base, and maybe we pulled Julio too early. And, I've talked in the past, and I'll restate this, I won't belabor the point, but I don't believe there are very many managerial decisions that are right or wrong, because I don't think right or wrong exists very often in that world. I think it's all about what I call them 60-40 decisions. Basically, you have a choice, and sometimes this choice will give you a 60% chance, or have a 60% chance of being successful versus 40% if you go the other way. And a manager's job is to choose the 60% as often as possible. Sometimes it's more like 52-48. Every once in a while you get one that's 90-10, or something where it's clear. But most of the time, actually, there's a lot of 90-10 decisions. It's just that we don't notice them because managers always make the 90 move. But I think a lot of times people think that moves are 90-10. I think a lot of people thought, well, it's clear that Julio could have gone another inning. And so I wanted to, my gut instinct is always, A, to recognize that I really don't think there's right or wrong decisions very often. And B, okay, let's give this guy who has the best managerial winning percentage in baseball since he became a manager, let's give him the benefit of the doubt and try to see, okay, what might he have been thinking? It's not really to say Dave Roberts can't be wrong. I've been very critical of him at times on this podcast and on Twitter. And, the fact is, most of the times I've been critical of him, it does have to do with bullpen management. A lot of the times it's his insistence on using starting pitchers as relievers in the postseason. I believe that Dave Roberts cost the Dodgers the 2019 World Series by having Clayton Kershaw pitch the 8th inning of Game 5 of the NLDS. I believe it was probably a 70-30 decision, and he went with the 30 to I can't remember the pitchers involved now. In Game 1 of the 2018 World Series, I think. Anyway, ended up the Giants pitched it for Rafael Devers and Nunez, was that his name? Anyway, dude hit a home run. I think it was taking out Pedro Baez and bringing in Alex Wood maybe. I thought that was the wrong decision. I think there have been a few. There are also a lot of decisions that a lot of people think were wrong that I don't. Taking out Rich Hill in Game 2 of the 2017 World Series, I think was absolutely the right move. I don't think that it was likely that, and by absolutely the right move, I mean it was the 60% over the 40%. I think it was more likely than not that the top of the Astros order would have gotten to Rich Hill the third time through the order. There's been a lot of decisions like that people disagree with and I think are either the right call or at least very defensible. So anyway, all that's just background to say I don't just assume that Dave Roberts was right, but I definitely assume that Dave Roberts is a good manager, basically. And so let's look and see what he might have been looking at. One of the things that jumped out at me was Julio only had 8 swings and misses in the whole game, only 4 strikeouts. And none of those strikeouts and only one of those swings and misses came in his last 2 innings pitched. His velocity was down in that last inning. So basically, he wasn't getting swings and misses anymore, and his velocity was down. Also, throughout the game, he had 8 hard hit balls, and 6 of them were turned into outs. There were 3 outs on batted balls with an expected batting average over 500. We saw really good plays by Mookie and Bellinger. The fact is, there was some luck involved in Julio's 6 shutout innings. Doesn't mean that the luck wouldn't have continued, but there was some luck there. The 2 hard hit balls that weren't outs were both hit by Thairo Estrada, who was coming up third in the 7th inning. You also had off days before and after this 2-game series, and you have 14 pitchers on the roster, so there's no real downside as far as bullpen management to turning the game over to an excellent bullpen in a close game. But I think a lot of it comes down to, one of the points that Alejandro made on Twitter was that you need Julio to be that guy who's built up so that he can go deep in the postseason. And I agree with that, but I think there will be plenty of games this year to let Julio try to get through a lineup for the 3rd time, maybe even the 4th time sometimes. But a close game against the team expected to be the biggest competition in the division might not be the ideal time. And that's kind of what Dave Roberts said afterwards. He said, I do believe he is that guy, meaning the guy who we can trust to go, 7-8 innings, to go 100 pitches. But Robert said, I do believe he is that guy, and we're going to lean on him all summer. I just didn't feel that tonight was the right time to lean on him like that. Robert cited the shortened spring training, Julio's unprecedented workload last year, basically everything, and the opponent to say, you know what, tonight wasn't the time to push him to 90 pitches or 100 pitches. Pull him at 65. Don't let him try to go through finish the lineup the 3rd time through. Throughout his career, even in his excellent season last year, Julio is significantly worse the 3rd time through the order. Last year, first time through the order, the OPS he allowed is 606. Second time, down to 554. Third time, up to 736 OPS. That means first time through the order, worse than average, a bad hitter. Second time through the order, a really bad hitter. Third time through the order, an above average hitter. That's kind of the OPSs that he allows. And all 3 of those numbers are right in line with his career numbers. His strikeout rate also goes way down the 3rd time through the order, and his walk rate goes way up. And so all of those things come into play, and plus it's a close game against the Giants. If it had been 6-0, I do think they would have let Julio go the 7th inning, because it would be, let's see what he can do. If it had been a different opponent, maybe they even let him go. Maybe not. But, a lot of it's the close game, and you really do have an excellent bullpen. So obviously that you can't just look at results. A lot of people saw the first 2 guys get on base against Gratterall, and that kind of compounded what they already believed, that Julio should have stayed in the game. I am going to talk about Julio in a minute, or not Julio, Gratterall in a minute. But yeah, so all of that stuff about Julio combines to say, I'm not saying it was the right decision, because I don't think right and wrong decisions exist. I do think this is probably more of a 55-45 decision than a 60-40, but I do think that Roberts was probably on the 55 side here. I think he did probably make the move that had the slightly better chance of success. And so, I think reasonable people can disagree on that. I do think that the idea of second-guessing a manager, not that managers shouldn't be second-guessed, I just think that since we can never know what would have happened otherwise, it's kind of it's almost a boring argument for me, like to go back and forth, because, 2017 game 2 again, the people saying that Roberts obviously screwed up by taking Hill out are just assuming that Rich Hill would have gotten through that lefty mashing top part of the Astros lineup a 3rd time. And they'll never be proven wrong, because we can never replay that game and see what happened the other way. And so you're always arguing against an unattained ideal when you're second guessing or trying to defend against second guessing of a manager. So it doesn't mean you can't second guess a manager. I just think we all need to keep the perspective and the humility to recognize we don't actually know what would have happened. So in this case, I think Roberts did do the slightly better move. And I think overall, the fact that the bullpen went 3 innings and didn't allow any earned runs got the job done. If you're into results, Dodgers got the win, and that's cool. So I think that's going to do it for that topic. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. If anything I missed or anything that, something you didn't realize that maybe I enlightened you a little bit, I'd love to hear. So anyway, I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm going to talk about Brusdar Graterol, kind of the bullpen shaky night altogether. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. Let's talk about Built Bar for a minute. Summer is coming, and sometimes you just need a snack. If you're like me, you're always on the go with baseball games for your kids or whatever, and sometimes you just need a snack that you can throw into your backpack or whatever and take it with you. Built Bars are great for that, and they're also healthy. Butterfingers are great for that too, but they're pretty bad for you. You'll end up looking like me if you eat too many Butterfingers. But if you want to look like, The Rock, you should eat more Built Bar. I don't know if that's guaranteed that you'll look like The Rock, but you're definitely not going to look like The Rock if you eat a bunch of Butterfingers. But every Built Bar is covered in chocolate, and yet somehow, despite being delicious and chocolatey, they're all low calorie, low sugar, low carb, high protein, high fiber. There's also Built Bar Puffs that are like chocolate covered marshmallows. It's even crazier that those are also healthy for you. So, they're a great snack, portable, delicious, and healthy. Doesn't get much better than that. So go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you will get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, I am back for our last segment. Oh, excuse me. It's late at night, and I'm a little bit tired. This late night games is for the birds, but I enjoy it. So I want to talk about Brusdar Graterol. Graterol came into the game. He got a weak grounder. Actually, his first 2 pitches both broke bats. Wilmer Flores got a broken bat, ground ball to Justin Turner that Turner inexplicably threw the ball away. So Flores ended up at second base. Should have been an out. And then he walked Brandon Crawford on a tough at bat. But, ultimately then you have first 2 guys on base. He did get an out, but then they had to he got a ground out, so a second and third, and they had to go to Alex Vesia. And, what we saw is Brusdar Graterol so far this season has been doing better on missing bats. He has a strikeout per 9 rate that's more in line with what you'd expect from a guy with his stuff. But what we saw tonight, I feel like, was what happens when he doesn't miss the bats. He still gets a lot of weak contact, but as we saw at times over the last couple of years with Kenley Jansen, weak contact sometimes turns into hits. And I feel like to be a dominant reliever, you need to strike guys out. You need to miss bats. We saw it with Blake Trinan too at times over the last couple of years. He goes through spells where he doesn't miss bats. He just gets weak contact. And sometimes that gets the job done, but sometimes it doesn't. And especially in a game like this one where the Dodgers were up by 2 runs when Graterol came in, and suddenly you have the tying run on second base with 1 out. The Dodgers basically had no choice but to go to Alex Vesia because he has a better chance of getting a strikeout. Especially the Giants set up a left-handed pinch hitter, so Vesia made sense. But, even in a vacuum, Alex Vesia is a guy who you can trust more to get the big strikeout. And, he gave up a sacrifice fly that I'll talk more about in a minute, and then he got a strikeout to end the inning. It was a frustrating appearance by Graterol just because some of it was command. Obviously walking Brandon Crawford shows that he wasn't quite hitting his spots. And the fact is, it's easier to get swings and misses when you're hitting your spots because you don't have to come to the big part of the plate just to get the ball over. And I think there was some of that, just the lack of command was contributing to that. But yeah, in the end, Dave Roberts probably ended up having to use 1 more reliever than he would have liked in this game. The bullpen went 3 innings, didn't allow an earned run, but, they had to use 4 pitchers to get those 3 innings. And, Daniel Hudson struggled with command. Craig Kimbrell walked a dude in the 9th inning. It was, there was some scary moments. So not the most dominant outing from the bullpen, and whatever it is that Gratterall needs to do, like I said, his strikeout per 9 rate has been better this year, and so I don't necessarily think it's a huge problem. Hopefully he has figured some things out, but a night like tonight just kind of illustrated what can happen when he isn't striking guys out, and that the weak contact can be bad luck sometimes. So beyond that, it was a good game. I mentioned the defense behind Julio being really good. I love the outfield of Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, and Chris Taylor. I think, I joked when the Dodgers got Mookie Betts that with Belly in center and Mookie in right, you could put me in left field and still have the best defensive outfield in baseball. Chris Taylor's significantly better than me. It's just such a good outfield. And Taylor being the worst of those three, I mean, he's an excellent outfielder, really tells you something. One other thing, I listened to some of this game on the radio. I was in the car with my family, and at one point, my wife's 93-year-old grandmother she asked 3 different times. She didn't know we were listening to a live game. Technology kind of weirds her out sometimes, but she didn't know we were listening to a live game, and she thought that it was me talking when it was Charlie Steiner. So I guess I'm glad that when I've been critical of Charlie Steiner in the past, I've made it clear that I actually really like his voice and I like him. I just think he's bad at describing what's happening in a game, because it turns out that at least to the ears of a 93-year-old lady, I sound like Charlie Steiner, or Charlie Steiner sounds like me, whichever way you want to go. So there's that. I think that's going to do it for me today. Obviously, good to get this win against the Giants and go straight in facing old friend Alex Wood. Last I saw, we still don't know who is pitching for the Dodgers in this game. I'm just scrolling Twitter for a second to see if they've announced that. I don't see anything yet as of right now at 11:40 p.m. Pacific time. But, the Dodgers presumably will use a pitcher and probably several. And, hopefully they can get to old friend Alex Wood and pound him a little bit and get a good big win and a series sweep. So thank you all for listening to Locked On Dodgers. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. If you're not watching or listening to Locked On Dodgers every day, we would love if you add 1 or 2 days a month to your rotation. If you have friends or family who love the Dodgers as much as you do, please tell them about the show. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at Vince Samperio. I'm on Twitter at Snider, and the DMs are open in all of those places. Our email address is lockedondodgers@gmail.com, and our phone number for voicemails or text messages is 323-863-LOCK, 5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree, you just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.